Everything is true. God's an astronaut. Oz is over the rainbow. And Midian is where the monsters live. And you came to die. Welcome to Storytime with the Hey You Guys podcast. 1988, the novel Cabal is released by Clive Barker. He says to himself, I can make this a movie. What follows is a film full of interesting visuals and story ideas, but overall a film possibly ruined by the intervention of the producers and the studio, who cut the film to fit their idea of what the film should be. We fast forward to 2014 and Clive Barker's director's cut, bringing back most of the intended ideas for the original film. There's a lot to discuss today, and I'm sure, but after Buckaroo Banzai and The Wraith, I fear that I may have pushed the boat out one too many times with a film that Liam hasn't seen and inevitably fell in love with. Is this the end of Liam going along with my left field choices? Let's find out together, shall we?
Oh, 100%. 100%. The run has ended spectacularly at the third hurdle. Like so many movie trilogies, they shit the bed on the final part. You know, This is exactly the same. I was so surprised by how much I love those films, The Wraith, Buckaroo Banzai. This, however, I mean, and again, there's so much to get into here, but to be clear, I watched the theatrical cut of this film, and I didn't know anything about it going into it. And now, having watched it, I'm still not sure I know anything about this film. And this film was a victim of circumstance in so many respects. And obviously, we'll get into the details of what happened with 20th Century Fox, the fiddling behind the scenes, very much the kind of low-key Alien 3, if you will, the lesser of the two stories. But for me personally, one of the major problems was that for some reason, I ended up sandwiching this film between Godfather Part 2 and Lord of the Rings, Return of the King. Now, you are talking about two of the greatest films of all time, two movies which were directed with such style, such confidence, some of the finest acting you'll ever see on screen. This movie has none of those things, whatsoever. Regardless of what's on the cutting room floor, the direction of this film is messy. The ideas, while really interesting, again, I'm going to use that term, messy. The acting, however, well, I mean, I don't know what to make of Craig Schaefer at all.
Last week, I called this film, I called Transformers a fever dream. When you compare that to Nightbreed, now you just said you watched the theatrical cut, and I've seen the theatrical cut previously. I've seen this film about 4 or 5 times. Always enjoyed what they were trying to deliver. It's very underrated. It's very underrated, but I kind of wound up watching what I thought was going to be the director's cut, and it was not. It's the Cabal cut. So basically, what the Cabal cut is, it's like 2.5 hours of what they found on Clive Barker's floor. So
so just be clear. So I watched the 102-minute long theatrical cut.
Yeah.
Which, don't get me wrong, there are large swathes of this film when you can see the botch job that 20th Century Fox has done on this. Like, don't get me wrong, this film's a mess regardless. But there are huge parts of this film where you're like, wait, what the hell just happened? You can feel the cuts so clearly. So I was suspecting that the 120 minutes director's cut probably made more sense, and I'm sure it does. But then you sailed right past that and went to the mythical 2.5 hour long Cabal cut. We might as well be talking about two completely different movies.
We're going to be, right? Because I'm going to turn around to you. One of the first things I wrote down on this was that kiss made me feel very uncomfortable, right? So the kiss, he is working on his car, or he's working in work. His missus comes up. I forget his name already. His missus.
Are you talking about Laurie and Aaron, or Boone?
Yes, Laurie and Boone.
Most of the film. Laurie and Boone. Yeah.
So he in his workplace. Did you see that version?
Oh no.
No. So he's in his workplace, right? She comes up to say hello. She goes to kiss him. He says, "Don't, I'm dirty." And then what proceeds to follow is a very uncomfortable, lengthy, nearly 2 minutes of what feels like they're going to go into a porno kiss. Like, he is swallowing her face, dude.
Oh, they're going for... Yeah, well, no, the theatrical starts with them in bed together. And the main thing that I should be drawn to her, but if anything, they go out of their way to make her look as frumpy as possible, which leads into the whole, dialogue about whether this is actually a gay LGBTQ movie in disguise. But he is very much just laying in bed in these ridiculous tidy whities kind of thing. And I'm just like, that whole scene is very odd. But I didn't get the aggressive makeout section.
There's another scene. There's another scene I wrote down. So as I'm writing these down, I'm realizing, dude, we're going to be talking about two completely different films, because there's a scene where he thinks he's the killer. He lights all the pictures on fire that Decker gave him, and we will get to the fact that David Cronenberg is in this film.
He's in this film. Oh, he's in this film, all right.
He lights all these pictures on fire, and he sat there watching the flames, but in the flames, he's visualizing himself in his tighty whities, walking over to his missus on the bed. And all I could write from that is his staircase made of old exhausts. But you probably didn't see. I didn't. Like, the theatrical cut is such an aggressive start. Like, the first note I wrote down is, this is as if Del Toro did a lot of cocaine. Like, that's what it felt like, that opening sequence. I'm not sure if it's super aggressive or super confident. Like, it actually reminded me, the title sequence of, the Marvel intro, when the music plays and you get the Marvel letters and you can see scenes from all the different films. It's like that, but a horrorscape, where it's cutting through like the letters of Nightbreed, but behind you are all these just monsters and just loud noises. And that is one of the things about this film. The sound design is horrifying. It's so goddamn loud all the goddamn time. And as much as I love Danny Elfman, it was almost as if, again, I'm not sure if this is a 20th Century Fox thing. Obviously, this is coming hot off the heels of Batman in 1989. Yeah. And a big part of Batman in 1989 was that Danny Elfman score. And of course, I can't remove Danny Elfman from Tim Burton now. So it gives the whole vibe of the film a kind of slightly surreal edge, more so than it already is. But it was almost as if to say, it's like, oh, well, people will associate this score with something that was successful, Batman. So they, as much as I like the score in and of itself for this film, it's so aggressively applied throughout every element of this film. And, you know as much as anyone, like, a Danny Elfman score is a very unique beast. Yes.
And it's like they've turned it up to 11 and just run it through the whole film. And then to kind of cut through the soundtrack, it's like they've turned up every explosion, every scream to 12. Just to kind of live with it. The ending in particular, which I'm sure we'll spend a bit of time on, is just noise. It's just noise. And, between that and the fact that half the time I don't know what the fuck is going on, it made for a bewildering experience. But it is something you referred to earlier, the fact that you can see the acorn of a good idea here, the acorn of a good movie. It's almost there. But between him perhaps not being the strongest director in the world, perhaps not get like a likable cast, but not necessarily the best actors in the world, and more so than maybe anything, it's just too many ideas in one place. And I know this is based on his own book. The book is called Cabal as well, isn't it? Yeah. It's like, there's a skill to taking something from the page and making it work on screen. And I don't think he could see the wood for the trees. When he's adapting his own work, he knows every little part of that world. Everything to him, I'm sure, makes sense. But then when you put it up on screen, I'm like, I don't know who I'm supposed to be rooting for. I don't like the tone of the film shifts back and forth.
Do you know what you sound like? You sound like the producers, because there's a fact that I have where the reason why the theatrical cut is like it is because the producers didn't know what was going on. And they said, it feels like you want us to root for the monsters who are the bad guys. And Clive Barker's like, no, the monsters are the good guys in this. Yeah. So it may not have been you may not have actually picked up on it. I'm not saying I don't have any faith in what you were watching, but Cabal then is what they renamed Boone at the end of the film. Yeah, that was right at the end. The thing is, the film makes more sense retrospectively. And just as a reminder to everyone, this is very much, I watched this film for the first time this morning, on a Sunday morning. It was quite the experience. But so much of the exposition, one of my notes is like the exposition kicks in 40 minutes too late. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of just dropping exposition, but for the love of God. And again,
it's hard to say, because maybe this film in its original format made more sense, but in its theatrical cut, it's like I was 40 minutes in and I'm like, I don't quite know who I'm supposed to be rooting for. I don't, like, things are jumping back and forth. A lot of the time watching this film, things are just happening and I don't understand why. But then there's quite a few exposition dumps, especially at the end of the film. So it's one of those weird experiences. I like the film more retrospectively, looking back on it, and certainly having done the research into what happened, the narrative behind the film. I actually like it more like 4 hours later than I did when I was watching it, because in the moment it was all a little bit too bewildering.
So it's definitely a film with a better aftertaste. The more you let that film, I guess, digest, the more, as I've already said, the more you can pick up on the nuances, the visuals, what Clive Barker was trying to go with. Did you get in your version Boone having a dream and all the monsters dancing around in the graveyard as he's zooming towards the
gate?
The gate, yeah.
Well, that's the opening. That is literally the very opening sequence. Is in like the title card.
Okay.
It's just, you're introduced to immediate noise. It's dark. He's running towards a fence. It's all done from the first person, I believe. And it's just monsters of all different shapes and sizes, just kind of screaming at the camera all the time. And then suddenly you've got this kind of overlay of the letters. And then you cut away to this mural, which again, retrospectively, I go back, it's like, oh, well, that's telling the story of the legend of Cabal, of Boone, as it were. But in the moment, and one of the characters actually looked like Blanket from Street Fighter, which I thought was probably just a coincidence, but whatever. But again, those moments make sense looking back at them. But to start a film, it was just like, what the hell is happening? What's up with the noises? What's up with these monsters? And even again, 40 minutes in, there was no consistency to what are they called, the monsters? Because I know Midian is the place where they are.
They're the
tribes of the moon.
They are the Nightbreed.
And that specific tribe of the Nightbreed are the tribes of the moon, is that correct?
No, so basically what they were just...
I kept seeing tribes of the moon, and I wasn't sure what that was.
So basically, from what I can gather, they were just the old gods kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They lived and everything, but then humans came along. They've had to go into hiding. So they're the idea of where monsters come from. And they were saved by Baphomet, and they were taken to Midian, and Midian's the place where they can live.
That is one of the major questions. Why did Baphomet, yeah?
Yeah, I think so. I believe
Why did he take him to Calgary? Like, of all the places, like, I've been to Calgary. Calgary's a nice little place. It's not where you expect to find Midian, where it's like, the remnants of this, this ancient society, who, let's be clear, aren't very good at, despite the fact that they seem obsessed with hiding, they're shit at hiding. They're really bad at hiding.
Yeah, because at any opportunity, they want to come out into the graveyard and
100%.
just mess with somebody. Can we talk? Because we're going to get lost in the fact that I watched this, you watched that, this film's all over the place.
Already lost.
Can we talk about the monsters? Right? Because
there's some great design there.
Great designs, but it's so, because you got basically half Moonhead. Or quarter Moonhead, sorry. It's made me laugh so much.
He reminded me of Jerry in his space worm form from Rick and Morty. Yeah. That's what he looks like. Yeah. I was like, dude, that's like the lamest. And that is the thing. They're so created unequally. Some of them with their like cool dreadlocks, or you've got the woman who's like a sexy porcupine. Like they're like badass. Yeah. And then you got another one. And this whole idea that they're supposed to be like shapeshifters. There's one dude who's just like basically a puddle, and another dude with his head on his stomach. I'm just like, what is your ability? What's your magic power? It's very odd.
What about the dude that has an unhealthy obsession with his dog? He wears a rat necklace. And he's got,
but otherwise appears human.
Like he's got, like, I don't understand why he just looks human.
He's just a guy. You got another dude with, he's got like tentacles coming out of his stomach a little bit too slowly to be genuinely useful. I mean, that guy should have shot him later in the film, but whatever. But yeah, the creature design, while largely nonsensical, does make for like a visually interesting film, because I don't think there's any other film which throws this much at you. But again, what I kept fighting against with this film was the tone, and maybe part of that was expectation, because it's a Clive Barker film. I immediately, when I think of Clive Barker, I think of horror, and I think very specific, Hellraiser, and how gory that film is. And then I was watching this film, and by the end of it, I'm like, so is this supposed to be like Monster Squad for grown-ups? Like, that's what it felt like. But even the violence is really inconsistent. Because again, as someone coming into it and not knowing anything about it, when I saw, what's his name? Narcissus, is that his name?
Narcissus, yeah.
Narcissus. In that scene in the hospital, when he basically starts peeling off his own face, I was like, oh shit, this is about to get real now. Like, this is going to get violent.
They're in some sort of med ward in the hospital, some mental ward in the hospital.
Yeah.
They're not searching for thumb knives, by the way.
Yeah. He seemed to just stroll in with thumb knives, didn't he? And who has thumb knives? Besides the point. But in that moment, when you legitimately see him kind of carve off parts of his own head, I was like, man, this is going to be super violent. And of course, you've already been introduced to Decker and his alter ego as whatever you want to call him, the mask monster guy.
Captain Button-Eyes.
Is that what his actual name is?
No.
Honestly, I believe you if you said
it is
Captain Button-Eyes. And he looks like something, out of a Del Toro kind of film. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be super violent. And then the rest of the film, they do a lot of like hard cuts away from the violence. And other than a few moments, it's relatively low key on the gore, but it still has that moment when he peels off his face. So again, I was like, as I'm watching it, I'm like, is this going to go like hard horror? Or are we watching Monster Squad 2? It was, again, made for a very strange film. And I suspect that's, again, the input of 20th Century Fox. And I'm not sure if the cut you watched is any more violent. But
well, so there's a... first of all, I wanted to say, obviously, they're trying to hint at this, that man is the monster and not the monster. With the whole, like, sheriff being a dick and everything like that. But when you said, was the cut I watched any more violent... The one that's pretty evident is, you just said in Narcissus. Narcissus. He actually gets killed in my version. Now, I remember clearly,
that's what I heard,
he's at the end, but he gets...
he survives.
He gets killed pretty quickly. He stands up to Decker. Decker takes out his, like, Jack the Ripper surgical knife, sword blade thing.
Captain Button-Knife.
Takes his head off.
Ooh.
So just chops his head off, and his head goes flying through the air and just lands on the ground.
Well, supposedly that was very much one of those, when they went to test screenings of the film, he was quite popular amongst the watchers. So they says, oh no, we've got to keep him in. So he does stay in the film. And I mean, I didn't have an issue with that because when it started, I thought he was going to be super annoying. But for somebody who's got most of his face peeled off, he does end up one of the more likable characters. Yeah. Because this film does lack for likable characters. Like I legitimately still don't know how to feel about Boone. Like, I'm really not sure about that character at all. There was a hint of the, with like the 50s get-up and everything, it almost felt like he walked in from a David Lynch film, like Twin Peaks, where he was kind of almost, it felt like he was purposefully acting quite wooden. And I'm not sure if that's the case, but it had that kind of surreal edge to it, and him with that kind of 50s gear. I actually thought Anne Bobby as Laurie was pretty good. And for the most part, I thought she was the more likable of the protagonists.
Did you see the Cyndi Lauper-esque dance song sequence as well?
No. We really have watched two very different films.
So after Boone basically swallows her face, he goes to see the doctor.
Yeah, Dr. Deckard. Dr. Philip K. Deckard. I mean, it's an unsubtle nod to his literary.
Yeah, I wonder who that's meant to be. Yeah,
I know. God knows.
And then he goes to see her performing, and she's doing a song and dance number at a club. And again, one of these things about this is going on way too long. She does pretty much the whole song, like a 2-minute song. just going.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's no time for that in the theatrical cut. I can tell you.
And she is channeling her like I said, her inner Cyndi Lauper. You said as well about Narcissus being likable. There's a scene in the version I watched. I can't remember it being in the theatrical cut. When they go to rescue Boone from the hospital, not from the hospital, from the prison cell, he is being held. He is being held at gunpoint by Spunkmeyer from Aliens.
Yeah, that's. I don't think he's got a real name. I'm pretty sure it's just Spunkmeyer.
He's Spunkmeyer from Aliens.
Yeah.
So he's being held. In your version, does the sexy porcupine strip off to just her boobs and then
She does, but not there. Not she's back at Midian. Like there's like 3 cops in the initial shootout, and she shows up and gets all like sexy dance with those guys, and they seem to fall for her charm, despite the fact that she looks like a porcupine, and she shoots up those guys. She's not at the prison though.
No, so in the prison, she's actually in the car with Narcissus.
Okay.
And then, yeah, she takes off her coat, and she's just walking up to him then, like naked, and then she makes out with him. He's on the floor, and then he's breathing weird fog out of his mouth.
Oh, no, that's not Porcupine Lady. No, that scene does happen in the film, but that's the other woman. That's the woman with the little girl.
Oh, mixing the two up. We're doing two. There's another sexy lady going on then, is there?
Yeah, there's 2 sexy. There's the woman who seems to be taking care of the weird cat ginger girl, the girl who's outside and turns into a cat for some reason. And then when she's indoors, she just turns into a little girl. She's the one who gets all sexy at the prison place. She gets her boobs out for no apparent reason. No apparent reason. There's been no suggestion before that she would get her rack out, but she does. She kisses Spunkmeyer and he basically dies. But then it cuts back to Midian, where Porcupine Lady also gets her top off and starts doing a sexy dance to the other cops there. And she kills the 3 cops who are in the kind of initial attack before things escalate to a level this is a local police force in Calgary. Oh, no, it's not even Calgary.
No,
it's
a
small town outside of Calgary. Yeah. And for some odd reason, they have rocket launchers and flamethrowers. What in the fuck?
The copper who was doing the armory scene, right? And he's going, I've got this, and this is my personal gun. That copper, yeah? And he's giving everyone the gun. He looked like the love child of Harold Ramis and, oh my God, Withnail and I, Richard E. Grant.
Richard E. Grant. We see, and so many of these scenes have been cut. And again, it might have made more sense to you, but that bit at the end of the film in particular kind of led me to believe that everybody knew about Midian. Like all these, again, you touched upon it earlier, this idea that the film is really about men are the real monsters, and that the monsters are, they're supposed to be sympathetic, and they are by the end of the film. But because none of these themes were explored with any kind of consistency throughout the theatrical cut in particular, things just keep jumping around. That cop who suddenly feels like the local sheriff, who in the last 20, 30 minutes of the film suddenly takes over the role as chief bad guy, representative of all evil humans or whatever. Like, there's no build-up to that. It's like there's a few people going, oh, so what's going on in Midian? And then all of a sudden he's calling in a priest because he needs a priest for some reason. And then he has like an army of hillbillies out of fucking nowhere. And everyone is just on board for us to go to Midian, to a graveyard in the middle of, kind of outside of Calgary, to go and kill potentially monsters. And there's no questions asked. And I'm like, wait, does everyone know about the monsters in Midian, about the Nightbreed, or is this just one psycho? And like I said, like the introduction of the priest feels like it comes out of nowhere. The introduction of the sheriff.
You mean Dexter Fletcher?
Yeah, I didn't even realize that was him.
No, it's not. He looks exactly like Dexter Fletcher.
He does look a bit. When you say again, you could say anything to me during this recording, and I will believe you because I don't know what happened. It was one of the more peculiar cinematic experiences I've ever had. Again, the one thing I'll say about it, as many problems as this film has, and the problems are myriad, to say the least, it is memorable, no doubt about it. And again, that whole retrospective thing, when I look back, I'm like, oh, well, there is the whole, undercurrent of men are the real monsters, and the monsters are actually the sympathetic, good guys. And of course, there's the famous, you could take a gay LGBTQ reading of this film, which might feel forced, the whole, fear of others, fear of people who are different, outsiders. Yeah. You could say, you could apply it to other films. If it wasn't for the fact that Clive Barker is famously homosexual. So, you're like, okay, maybe it's not so subtle, maybe it's not a hidden message. So there are all these underlying themes and interesting ideas which, again, I just think certainly in the theatrical cut just don't get their time to shine. And it's only afterwards. You're like, oh, yeah, I can kind of see what this film was doing basically X-Men before X-Men. It works in much the same way. They're trying to keep themselves hidden. Obviously, they can't kind of live amongst us because they do legitimately look like monsters. But there's a serious X-Men vibe to this movie, but it's kind of buried underneath mayhem. And obviously a studio who really didn't know what to do with this film.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not sure why they committed to making it in the first place, because the book already existed. They knew what Clive Barker was about. And then I don't know if they've kind of panicked late in the day, but
they shit themselves late in the day, and they've taken charge. I tell you what, on the version I watched, what really stands out more is the manipulations of Decker. We haven't mentioned Decker much, aside from the fact he's now called Captain Button Eyes. Yeah. The manipulations of him stand out a bit more in the cut that I watched. Like in regards to how he's manipulating the local sheriff to become that guy, and how because you don't see much of the detective from Calgary in your cut, if I remember rightly, but you see a bit more of him and how he's starting to become sympathetic towards Boone and the monsters. Is
that Hugh Quashie as Detective Joyce, you mean?
Yeah.
The guy from episode 1. I was like, who is that guy? Oh, he's one of the Royal Guards from episode 1. That's what I remember him from. So, he doesn't feel like he exists in this film.
No, so there's more of his character as well in the theatrical cut. But because you get an initial phone call from Decker to Boone saying, look, Boone, I need to see you. You need to come to my office. And he's like, well, is everything okay? And he's like, no, come to my office tomorrow and we'll discuss it. But in your cut, it's literally the first time you meet Decker, Boone is already in his office talking about Midian, saying it's just dreams. And the only real manipulation that you get within the theatrical cut, there's him talking to that detective when they're in the hospital. And then the second one, which always makes me laugh, because Decker in this film is so stoic. He's so soft-spoken. He's just delivering his lines to everybody.
I like the performance. Yeah, I really like the performance.
But he's there and he's going, "Oh, look, Boone, we need your help. Everything's Boone. He's got a gun!" And
it turns
what the fuck just happened?
It worked though. Got him shot.
So that's the only.
No, that is. But that is one of the things that's missing. Yeah.
In the director's cut, then. Or the Cabal cut, whatever cut I watched. I watched a totally different film. Cabal director, I'm not even sure what I watched. But in the other version that I watched, there's more manipulations, especially in the hospital, because Decker is then talking to the detective saying, look, I can get into Boone's mind. I know about Boone. So maybe if I talk to the guy that just tried to cut his face off, I can let you know where he's going and things like that. Do you know what I mean? And then there's more of a conversation with because there's a scene then just before Narcissus gets killed where he goes up to Decker and he goes, you remember me? Remember what you did to me in the hospital? And then he cuts his head off. Do you know what I mean? But
that scene does happen in the film. Like they do have those interactions, but again, everything I think is like cut it shorter. Like some of those scenes kind of happen to one extent or another. But that is one of the big issues I had with Deckard. As much as I liked his character, and I really like it's bizarre, David Cronenberg acting in this film.
What's he doing in this film?
But I really like it's a creepy performance. I think it adds a certain weight to the film. And I love the look, the mask. I don't know why he's wearing the mask. Again, maybe
that's one thing I missed. And I'm not too sure if it's said, but apparently the mask is another voice to him. The mask is what's telling him to, because he tells Boone, the mask made me do it. The mask is telling me to do this.
So I see.
For him, so again, in that cut, this is what I said about Decker. You're getting more of a feeling for his character, his manipulations.
Well,
the mask is telling him to kill people.
Yeah. See, all these things, again, retrospectively make it more interesting, because when I'm watching it, I'm like, why is Decker there all the time? Why is everyone allowing Decker to just be so involved in this investigation?
Yeah.
And I just think it was just a shame that, again, it kept jumping around. And again, what it reminded me of was a film I feel quite strongly about, actually, Batman versus Superman. The difference between Batman versus Superman and Batman versus Superman, the director's cut or the ultimate cut, one of the things that film changes, and all that film does is the ultimate cut is add 30 minutes of dialogue and character interactions. Yeah. It doesn't add any action or anything like that. But one of the things it does is really add to the impact of Lex Luthor and how he's twisting the knife behind the scenes, how he's turning Batman and Superman against each other. And I think that fundamentally not only changes the film, but like really has a massive impact on Jesse Eisenberg's performance and Lex Luthor's involvement and impact on that film. And I feel like you might have a similar situation here where I quite like Deckard's performance. I like the look. I like David Cronenberg. But the whole time I'm like, why is he here? Why are they allowing him around? Like, I left the film and I was like, did he even need to be in it?
Yeah.
I wasn't convinced he was, because the narrative really is about, certainly by the end of the film, about like the sheriff. And of course they don't, like you're talking there about like Deckard having that influence on the sheriff. That doesn't exist in the theatrical cuts. So they feel like completely separate beasts. Like there's this Deckard storyline going on, and then all of a sudden, 50 minutes into the film, the sheriff appears out of nowhere and he escalates things so quickly, and we don't know why.
I know.
There's no, and what, same as Batman versus Superman, what it removes is all the character motivations. Like by the end, I was watching things, I'm like, I just don't know why anyone is doing what they're doing. I mean, there are more like pressing issues in terms of some of the cuts where people are just suddenly like, when Boone dies and then comes back to life, suddenly it just cuts to an open window and then he's just at Midian below with all the monsters just having like a ritual. I'm like, how did he get here? Why is he here? What's up with the hand thing? And again, like that was all I kept doing, was like, as I'm watching the film, I just kept saying to myself, like, why is this happening? Why is that happening? Oh, okay, this is a thing. And it's a shame because, as we've mentioned so many times previously, this is almost a good film. There's a good idea here. I like the world building. I even like, as I said, most of the characters, but certainly the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
And you've obviously seen the theatrical cut before. It doesn't make any sense.
No,
really
this movie needs a mini-series. There's so many ideas they've tried to put into one film, whether you get the 1 hour and 20, the 2 hour film, the 1.5 hour film, 2.5 hour, whatever you get. There's way too many ideas in this film because you're following along for parallel storylines as well, like you just said. Do you know, there's the Midian storyline, there's Boone and Laurie, there's Cronenberg, Captain Button-Eyes, there's the psycho sheriff, who the whole press conference thing really got me as well. Like, he's just, all of a sudden he's appeared there, he's my jurisdiction, right, I'm going to have a press conference. And then it goes from, right, I'm having a press conference really quickly, to, what did you do? Because the guy who I got in my cell doesn't have a pulse. And they're not really majorly upset about the fact that they've got a guy with no pulse. Yeah,
they seem to just be like, again, the way people react to things happening in this film feels very diluted, very low key.
Yeah.
Like the doctor seems to be the only one like, wait a minute, what the fuck? This guy's alive, but he doesn't have a pulse or a heartbeat. Everyone else seems, and like you said, for me watching it, I was like, wait, so is the sheriff and everyone else very much aware of this being a thing? Because nobody seemed to react like a human being. But then equally, I would argue that Laurie doesn't really react to monsters and that weird cat thing, like when she first arrives in Midian. It's like, she's like, well, that's kind of weird, not like, what the fuck, I'm out. You know, and...
Was there, because you said Laurie and the weird cat thing, did you get the fact that they then shared each other's dreams? Did they have that in your cut?
What? That Laurie and...
The cat girl. No, Laurie and the cat girl.
Oh, no.
Because it was a thing then, right, you've saved her, so now she's imprinted on you, so she can see what you see through your dreams, and you can see what you... And you can see
it's
vice
all
versa.
Missing. I think you're absolutely right. Like, even beyond the director's cut, and I don't get me wrong, I am actually keen to watch the director's cut now. Like, this film and this concept is screaming out for like a 9-part Netflix special, because you know, we've talked about other films, you know, and it's one of the things we usually get to in Legacy. There is some, as I already mentioned, some really interesting world building, some really interesting visual designs, some great ideas. It does not have enough time, or obviously it didn't have enough faith from 20th Century Fox for it to run to its conclusion. And if you had Netflix come in and say, all right, Clive Barker, you can kind of run with the ideas, we'll perhaps get in maybe a more subtle director, should we say, and we'll give it the breathing space that it needs, because this was never going to work as a 2-hour film. There is just too much going on, and you're thrown in. And the fact that I was watching an hour and 40-minute runtime, to say that you're just thrown into the deep end would be a massive understatement. It's just, there's too much. It's too confusing, and the fact that they've obviously just taken a butcher's knife to what was already there makes an already confusing premise,
Yeah.
all the more bewildering. I just find it amazing that 20th Century Fox looked at this film and said, in its current format, the original cut, it's too confusing for an everyday audience. So they just took out everything that might help you understand the film and just went, oh, well, we'll just give them like 90 minutes or 100 minutes of just sheer mayhem, and hopefully they won't notice. I mean, even the way they sold it as a slasher movie. They clearly had no idea what to do with it.
They said they didn't want the monsters to be the good guys, the sympathetic guys. So they've sold it as a slasher film.
But they still are, though, even in the theatrical cut. And, you know, the fact that they cut out all that stuff, but in the theatrical cut, there was still time for a flying manta ray, which just comes out of fucking nowhere, both literally and figuratively. It's like you got all these monsters, and then for some reason, but all those monsters, to one extent or another, are of human descent. You know, they're kind of in a humanoid form.
Yeah.
Even the big, what are they called? The kind of the monsters. There's like the monsters, the Nightbreed.
The berserkers.
Then you got the berserkers who are much more, you know, gross and stuff. But then out of nowhere, there's just one scene when there's like 4 flying manta rays. And I'm just like, where the fuck did, like, it felt like they literally flew directly out of Big Trouble in Little China into this film and then just flew off again. It was very strange. Even towards the end of the film, all of a sudden, like for most of this film, it felt like there were like 8 Nightbreed, like 8 monsters. And then all of a sudden they cut to this huge underground world, which had been absent for the rest of the film. And there were like hundreds then. It was, the pacing, the reveals, the narrative, everything in this film, sadly, is a bit of a mess.
I read that. Sorry.
That's okay.
Why was the captain from Red Dwarf there as the dad that gets killed?
Oh, I have no idea. There's so many. Why does nobody sound Canadian? No, like other than the opening sequence, because they say it's set in Canada, and there's that opening sequence where Captain Butterhands comes into the house and kills the mother, the father, and I assume the kid, although they cut away.
So they say 2 kids.
Yeah, okay. Well, you only see one in this version. Yeah. But that mother sounds Canadian as fuck. And I was like, oh, they're going to lean into this. Everyone's going to be like mad Canadian. It's going to be great fun. No one else is Canadian then for the rest of the film. Like even when they go into a bar and she meets that weird-ass Shirley girl.
Cheryl. What was the point in Cheryl?
No point in Cheryl. There's no point in Cheryl. She has a drink with Cheryl. Cheryl just suddenly decides we're best friends and I'm going to go anywhere you go. And then immediately gets killed. What the fuck, Cheryl? What happened? What was the point of you other than to get killed?
Why Decker, or whatever name Decker gave her when he rocked up at Midian. She didn't even question why he showed up at the cemetery. It was just like, oh, you're here. Great. Okay. And then, okay, I'm dead now.
Yeah, it's my boyfriend, that creep.
My boyfriend, who I met one day ago.
Oh, I don't know, man. There's so many questions. Like, I literally said out loud to my wife when we were watching it, like, this is the final sequence. I was like, why is everything exploding? Why is everything exploding? Like, I appreciate for someone...
If you were talking for you, because you always mention that you watch these films with Beth and your wife.
Yeah.
If you were talking if you were speaking for her, I want a 1-word review of this film from Bethan.
It'd be the same as me. She would just say messy. Like she legitimately, I was surprised because I thought she was going to flat out hate it. But she said the exact same thing as me. She was like, there is a good idea, or there is a good, I think a specific sense was there's a good movie in there somewhere, but we didn't see it. And that is probably absolutely bang on. I didn't even subject my wife to this. I waited until my wife went to bed because there's no way she would have watched this film. I don't blame you. I mean, as I said, like we're kind of we're inundated with all that kind of exposition and prophecy nonsense right at the end of the film. Who's that big black dude who's like tied to the ground? Okay, yeah. Well, he's just a thing at the end of the film. There's all that prophecy nonsense going on. Everything explodes. Not sure why. And just as I think it can't get any more mental, you have that final, very Clive Barker scene with Deckard being brought back to life by the priest, apparently, who suddenly turned into a monster.
Yeah.
I can't figure out for the life of me why. And the final shot of the theatrical version is just Deckard coming back to life and screaming directly at the camera. It's It's a suitably bizarre ending for a suitably insane film.
This is why, like, when you say messy, that there is no more justification for the word messy than that, because you barely see the priest anyway. The priest is randomly just in the sheriff's station.
Yeah, don't know why.
Yeah, reading from the Bible. Then they've brought him along.
I think I say reading from his book. I didn't catch what book it was, but he was reading most of the time.
Yes, he's reading from this black book, and it said King Edward, King James.
Well, yeah.
No, so he's reading from his Bible. Then they're bringing him along as like some sort of God witness to everything. And then what they're trying to hint at is that he thinks all living creatures need to be together. So he's like, oh, please don't hurt the monsters, blah, blah, blah. Then he gets burnt because they make a big thing of it at the end. You are judged by Baphomet's blood. Like, you put your hand in if you're worthy of Midian, Baphomet's blood.
Yeah.
So he gets splashed in the face by Baphomet's blood, loses all his hair. He turns into the leader from the Hulk comics, where his head
exactly what I thought. I legitimately, God, we're both such geeks that I went to the exact same place. I was like, dude, he's like the leader from the Incredible Hulk.
Yeah,
exactly the same.
So he turns into the leader, and then all of a sudden he can now revive people because he wants the monsters of Midian to now die.
Mate, that ending was legit insane. I didn't get anything about the hand in the water, about him getting it on his face. I just, all of a sudden, he showed up in the rubble with a leader-sized head and the power to bring back Captain Butterhands from the dead. And like that last scene in particular felt super, super Hellraiser-ish. And I was like, man, that was wildly out of place. So obviously plans for the sequel that we never got to see, but maybe the TV show, because there is talk about bringing it back as a TV show.
I think this is so, not only is it so ripe for a remake, it needs that long storytelling. There's so much,
and there's enough there.
There's enough there, like storytelling.
Yeah, like as much of a mess as this film is, there's enough there in terms of the narrative, the characters, that I'd be legitimately interested in seeing, like you say, an 8-hour HBO kind of special on this, where hopefully it's given the budget it certainly requires and the talent behind the screen. But the idea, the concept is sound. It's just the reality of what was put in front of people in 1990, or in my case, Sunday morning, 2022, made for a somewhat more disappointing experience, I think. Remind
me how yours ended with Boone and Laurie. Your version.
Boone and Laurie just left. They just left. Like, it was, again, so by the end of it, everyone's like, oh, you're a hero, despite the fact that Midian is just blown to bits. He leaves the Nightbreed then, and they're just standing in what appears to be a broken barn, not in really great shape, if truth be told, and then just leaves with Laurie, and then it just, to my mind, it just cuts away to the priest and Deckard and all that nonsense. Yeah. Something else might have happened in between, I'm not going to lie, but by this point, I was like talking out loud to my wife, trying to make sense of what we were watching and what we'd seen for the past hour and a half.
So Baphomet, in the version I watched, Baphomet names him Cabal.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. No, I saw that. That was before, yeah.
And then gives him the mission to find the Nightbreed a new home. So they are still in the ban, and he does need to lead them on to a new home. So he's gone to look for a new home. He's about to break up with Laurie because he won't age, he won't die now.
Okay.
So Laurie decides, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to stab myself. So she stabs herself. Yeah, she stabs herself, kills herself. He then bites her, hoping to bring her back. Holy
shit!
Yeah, stabs herself. He then bites her, hoping to bring her back. And there's this thing then of it's not working. Oh, Laurie. But then all of a sudden, then she's back to life.
Because she wants to be a knight.
Yeah.
Oh, so she kind of like forces, like she doesn't just kill herself. I mean, she does, but she's trying to force his hand to make her a Nightbreed. Yeah.
She doesn't. That's the thing. There's no talking about what that decision is. It's literally, Boone, you're going to leave me. So whether or not she's killed herself because she can't live without Boone, or whether she has the idea that if I kill myself, Boone will turn me and I'll be one of them. There's no hint at what her thought process is.
I hope it's the latter, because she does actually have quite a bit of agency throughout the film.
Yeah.
And it'd be a shame if she was just saying like, oh, Boone, you lame motherfucker, I can't live without you, so I have to kill myself. Like, I can live with the idea that she wants to be a Nightbreed at that point. So she, you know, and he's like, oh no, I'm not going to make you a Nightbreed. So she kills herself to force his hand. That is something I could live with. If she's just killing herself and then just by chance he brings her back, fuck that. Fuck that. But again, it would have made more sense than the version of that I saw, which ends really, really abruptly.
Let's be fair. Who can't live without somebody in those tighty whities? I mean, come on.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I mean, his look, his mullet, you know, he would almost like, you know, like the white t-shirt, blue jeans and leather jacket. It's a kind of timeless look, but it is made very timely by the mullets and the tighty whities. Like, oh, okay, this is happening late 80s, early 90s for sure. Whereas, again, the way she's dressed, again, makes you, you know, kind of understand the fact that Clive Barker isn't particularly interested in women. They seem to go out of his way to make it look as frumpy as possible. But then you do have all like the sexy scenes with the monsters. But yeah, don't know what to make of that at all. But then I don't know what to make of most of this film. So
before we move on to Love and Hate, which is going to be super interesting, I've got one more thing written down. I don't know if you've got anything left. The doctor who does the autopsy on Boone, the first one. It is amazing. Possible cause of death, gunshot wounds. Possible cause of death.
Possible, yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
I think the 72 bullets might have been the reason for his death.
Like, that guy stood there while they turned him into a fucking colander. And they're like, oh no, he may have died from this, but it may have been, I don't know, he stubbed his toe on the way out. Possible cause
We're not 100%. This is going to take some more investigation. Yeah, sure it is, buddy.
But that's all I've got for...
I was literally scrolling through my notes then, and so much of it are just little issues that I have throughout the film, like little what the fuck moments. But like, I don't know where to start and I don't know where to end. So I'm probably have to call it a day there. The only thing I will say is that do you not think that Dr. Philip K. Deckard's mask is mega Slipknot? Like it totally looks like a Slipknot mask. Like I was to the point, I was like, I wonder if any of the guys in Slipknot have actually worn the Deckard mask, because it just looks perfect. Like I can totally see. Is it Corey Taylor? Whatever his name is.
Corey Taylor, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a douchebag, but I could totally see him in the Deckard mask. But I just thought, like, the first thing when he popped up, I was, oh, that's pretty Slipknot. And then I was saying, like, oh, that's David Cronenberg. That's kind of cool.
The look of that, the way, like, he's got that overcoat, the mask, that massive knife that was made famous in the Jack the Ripper film from Hell. And he belongs in... I understand why they wanted to make it a slasher, because obviously that look. But he belongs in his own film about just that character.
Well, again, I think if you had a series, you could make him work. Is this different? Like you said, if he was the one behind the scenes, you know, they really kind of established what he was trying to do clearly. And then he was the guy, whether it be the sheriff or whether it be Boone, really manipulating everybody while setting up Boone, setting up a certain image kind of thing, you know, with like the deaths and all that jazz, which is done to a certain extent in the film. But again, that word, it all feels very messy. I still think he could work in this film. And I think it's just because I want him to, because I love the look of the cat. It's such a strong look. And I think Cronenberg's performance is legitimately fantastic. He's so creepy in this film, but in that oddly professional way. You can see why people would listen, because he looks the part. Like, you know, like he looks like a psychiatrist, but he's big as well. And when he puts the mask on with the coat, he's an imposing figure. Yeah, like I said, that was one of the first things I was like, that guy in particular feels like he's walked straight out of a Guillermo del Toro film. Yeah. And again, there's all these individual parts in this movie. His character maybe more so than most, which really work in of themselves, but don't work as part of the film. Yeah. But could do if given the time and maybe a kind of a couple of rewrites.
That's absolutely, as you say, given the time, because there's a throwaway line as to why he's killed these families is because they don't deserve to be happy, because they're happy that a family, that's why he's killing them. And that's kind of why he wants to get rid of the Nightbreed, because they're monsters that don't deserve to be happy. Like, it's really weird. But if he had more time to actually delve into the reasons he's doing this.
Establish his motivations and whatnot. Yeah, absolutely. No, it's a shame. It's a shame. But
unless you've got anything else,
still some great stuff. Yeah,
let's go to love and hate. All right, so
Okay.
I'll go first then. So 3 things I love. You've already said it. The whole Decker vibe, like his look, when he's the killer, even the reasons around him being like soft spoken, like I said, and then all of a sudden he just yells, he's got a gun, and he goes back to being soft spoken. The whole thing around Decker, I think, is done really well. The look of most of the Nightbreed, the visual looks, the visual effects, I think are done so well. Like, honestly, I think
most of them anyway. Some of the monsters are slightly lame, but most of them,
even the slightly lame ones, I think they still look
they're
good.
memorable. No, I'm with you.
Yeah, and it was really hard to think of a third one. So, like, in regards to what you love, because obviously the story is a bit wish-wash. We'll get into hate and all that, but I did love Narcissus or Narcissus.
Yeah, I quite liked him.
Yeah. I like his character. I love the fact that why he was out of Midian, but then all of a sudden he's in Midian, but he was out of Midian with his face fine, and then he was in Midian, but only Boone had to go through the Midian selection process.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense. Why he's got that dusty old car, which again looked cool, made no sense. But I mean, for love, I basically got the same thing.
I fucking love the car. The old.
Oh, the car's cool.
Yeah, the car.
Yeah. No, the car was pretty ace. I mean, I've got 2 of the exact same. Like, I've got Cronenberg, but very much not just the character, like the whole performance. I just like Cronenberg. I love one scene in particular when they're doing an interrogation of Laurie at the police station. And it's the police officers there, and for some odd reason, again, they've let Deckard in. Makes no sense. But then they cut away, and they cut back to Laurie, and he's suddenly behind her, like in her ear. And I'm like, wait, what the fuck is he suddenly doing sitting behind her? It's very strange, but it works because he's super creepy. So Cronenberg, the look, the performance, I'm on board. The other one, I've got monster design. Same as you. I think it's really imaginative, gives the whole film a unique vibe. And the third one I've got down is world building. Again, we've covered it quite a few times. Like, there is an interesting world, a universe being built here with some really interesting themes. It just doesn't get the opportunity to really dig into the more interesting concepts, which are just under the surface in this film. So those are the 3 things I love. And I really do love those things. But there's quite a bit I hate as well. So it's fine.
So hate is the way the story travels. But that could, as you said, that's already blaming 20th Century Fox or whatever, because if you look at the cut that you watched, it's just all over the place. It is absolutely, it's just insane. It makes no sense. But you can see what they're trying to do. So I appreciate that. But the story is not the best part of this film.
Yeah.
The sheriff, I didn't see the point in the sheriff. I don't understand the sheriff. I don't get why he's there. Like, it just seems...
Oh, I do. I think he's very much... Because Deckard is almost too kind of like a Belika character kind of thing. You're like, well, for the most part, I'm like, well, what is he trying to achieve? I think the sheriff really does, towards the end of the film, just represent the evil side of humanity. And again, because it's being kind of pushed to the background, that narrative he's trying to build where the monsters are the good guys and the humans are the bad guys, I think he's very much supposed to represent the worst of humanity, the cop, or of the kind of, the binary kind of ideal, whichever way you want to look at this film, whether it's good versus evil or, straight and our, fear of the LGBTQ community, whatever. So I kind of get why he's there. But again, like so many things in this film, it's not kind of covered with any clarity. That's the problem.
And finally, it's the priest, because the priest is just absolutely insane. There's no point in him. There's no reason for him other than to, like you said, to turn him into a leader for maybe the sequel that would never come. I just didn't get the priest.
No, I'm 100% with you on that. The priest's involvement. And again, in a better film, in a more kind of, a film with a chance to breathe, as it were, there is potentially the place for the religious aspect, because it is something they play into. Like, Midian is from the Bible.
Yeah.
And there's Moses, obviously those kind of and the story of Moses. But again, none of that's given time to breathe. So I think there is potentially a place for a priest in this film and for the kind of religious outlook on this film. But in this film, I 100% agree with you. He doesn't make any sense whatsoever. He's just kind of there. And it's even worse considering what happens in the final scene. In terms of my three, I've got, similar to you, I've got the studio cut. They've taken what could have been an interesting film and kind of just cut it to bits. I've got Boone. I don't think he's a great character. You know, you're talking about the lead of the film. He has an interesting look, I suppose. But the performance from Craig Sheffer, I don't think is fantastic. Yeah. I don't think he's necessarily got a huge amount to work with. So not the finest of movie protagonists, that's for sure. And I've already alluded to it, the final battle, which is just a mess. It's just noise, explosions, screams. I don't know what the hell's going on. I don't know why anyone's fighting. So I thought it was, as I said, a suitably messy end to a suitably messy film.
Yeah, no, makes sense.
Cool. Do you want to go to facts?
Yeah, surprisingly, there's not many. I mean, they all center around the same kind of thing, which is the theatrical cut, the Cabal cut, things like that. So I'll go over what I found. We've already alluded to this one. I say alluded. We've already downright said this one. David Cronenberg is named Dr. Philip K. Decker, a reference to sci-fi author Philip K. Dick. Mm-hmm. Some of the Nightbreed inspired merchandise included a 25-issue Nightbreed comic book series, a Nightbreed game for the home computer, and books such as the Nightbreed Chronicles. We're going to cover most of this in Legacy, I would assume.
Yeah, we'll run through it pretty quick.
Clive Barker has gone on record as saying that he felt the distributor Fox and financiers Morgan Creek Productions never understood the film and simply cut his story to pieces so it would fit what their idea of the picture should have been. The character Lylesburg's voice was originally redubbed by an anonymous German actor for the correct accent, much to Doug Bradley's annoyance. Doug Bradley, famous for being Pinhead in Hellraiser. Yeah. Because they didn't want the British accent coming through. But in the theatrical cut, it goes back to his British accent. Yeah.
Brilliant.
David Cronenberg wrote the script for Naked Lunch in his spare time when he wasn't acting in this film. In the director's cut release...
Man of many talents.
It's like Shane Black writing Lethal Weapon on the set of Predator.
Oh, I know. Well, that was probably a touch more successful, should we say, that here.
Naked Lunch was the Peter Weller film, wasn't it? Where the bugs...
Yeah, I've never actually seen that. I've seen so many of Cronenberg's films, but I've never seen Naked Lunch.
I think I've seen Naked Lunch once, and it was interesting, to say the least. You'd probably realise why it was interesting if he wrote it whilst his headspace was in Nightbreed.
Yeah. I can imagine so.
So, in a director's cut released in 2014, Doug Bradley re-recorded his dialogue as Lylesburg, restoring his voice after being dubbed in the theatrical release. So that's good. He came back to re-record it.
Oh, cool.
What else have I got?
Yeah, you were right. It is Peter Weller. So, that was released in 1991, and it's actually quite well reviewed. And it's not a film, as I said, I just remember Peter Weller, like in the hat, the kind of detective look, and sitting next to an alien. That's the only thing I remember about this film existing, but I don't know anything else about it. But of course, because
I've seen it once. It might be interesting to revisit. But maybe...
I'm kind of interested in it now. You should check out the poster. So yeah. Any interest? Check out Naked Lunch. Watch the trailer for that. Pretty bonkers.
But maybe we'll give the left field choices a couple of weeks before.
Well, the thing is, let's be clear. If you're listening to a Nightbreed podcast, chances are you're open to the idea of David Cronenberg's Naked Lunch. Let's be honest.
I wrote this one down, right, because it sounds like a fan, a family member, or Clive Barker himself putting this fact in just to say no, it happened. Mark Frost ghost wrote the screenplay for Nightbreed. Clive Barker most definitely wrote the book.
That's it, yeah?
Yeah, that's
it. This is what we're dealing with in terms of facts. I mean, as well, it kind of leans into legacy, I suppose. And you've already mentioned some of those. I mean, there was a comic book, there was a 2-part graphic novel. I think one of them was actually what was it? Nightbreed versus Hellraisers. I mean, just trying to cross the worlds. Okay. And I mean, to kind of blend it in with our video game section, there were actually 2 Ocean released video games. There was a Nightbreed action game on the Commodore 64 and the Amiga, and then there was a Nightbreed interactive kind of movie, and that was like the Amiga ST. And there was supposed to be a 3rd game, an RPG, but that was canned because the first 2 games basically bombed. So it really was that idea of this being like almost like an expanded universe, I think. Yeah. But it just never took off. You know, the film, I think, did $8 million US off an $11 million budget. I'm not sure if it would have made back anywhere near its kind of production costs or anything. Oh, sorry, its advertising costs. So it just never caught on. And obviously it was it wasn't the film that he wanted it to be, but you can see why it became a cult classic. And, I wouldn't be surprised if someone like, Del Toro was influenced by this film. And as I said, I know they already existed, but there was definitely hints of the X-Men about it all. And when we talked about, I think you mentioned the TV show already, a Morgan Creek production, I think they still owned it up until certainly recently. And there was talk of doing a Nightbreed TV show in 2014. And I think it was still in the works as recently as 2018 for the Sci-Fi Channel. So I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but to be honest, I'm not sure if I want to see Nightbreed on the Sci-Fi Channel. I think it needs a bit more, finance behind it. You want it to be Apple, or you want it to be Amazon, Netflix, HBO, something like that, because if you do this with a limited budget, it ends up looking like cosplay, doesn't it? That's the problem.
Yeah.
It ends up looking cheesy. And I think you need somebody to come in and take the subject matter seriously and deal with those themes which are there. There's really interesting themes.
It'll end up looking like an episode of Babylon 5.
That was exactly what I was thinking. I was like, this will end up looking like Babylon 5, and you cannot have that. If you're going to do this, you've got, and maybe that's why it hasn't been done, because I legitimately think you've got to throw some serious money and talent at it, because there's a good idea here, but you cannot go half-baked. You've got to go two-footed on this motherfucker. It needs hopefully someone does it one day.
It needs Netflix or Amazon Prime cash, and just make it a mini-series. If you want to extend it after that, whatever, but just plan it as a mini-series. Going back to like when Stephen King, the Stephen King miniseries, like what did you have? You had the Outside,
The Stand,
and you had the Stand and things like that. Yeah, just leave them as miniseries. Just do that.
No, that's what it needs. Like, and that is the thing I think they're realizing with, say, Stephen King's novels, because they're so dense. It was like they did the same with Under the Dome, and obviously even the TV shows have been kind of different levels of success. I think The Outsiders may be one of the more successful examples of adapting Stephen King's work for a miniseries. But if you have any interest, or if anyone has any interest in taking Nightbreed and doing something, giving basically another run at it, we've already said it numerous times, but it really needs to be a miniseries at the very least.
Yeah.
And it needs to have some serious talent, because otherwise, you've already seen what can happen here, how easily it could go off the rails. You need someone who's really committed to this, and I'm not sure if it'll ever happen, to be honest. But I'd be interested to see it. I'm interested to see the Cabal cut at this point, or the director's cut, just to see if it kind of makes a bit more sense compared to the version I watched. But
next time you come down, I'll pop her on for you. I may have to leave you alone in the living room for 2.5 hours.
Yeah, because I'm not sure if you want to watch it again. Fair enough. I mean, the only other section we usually have is soundtrack and score, and we've already covered that. I mean, the Danny Elfman score, it's used so liberally and so aggressively. And as I said, combine that with the distractingly loud sound design in this film, it makes for a film which is a bit of an audio onslaught, to say the least. Yeah. But as I said, like most of his films, it does give the film a somewhat unique tone. Although, like anything else in this film, a somewhat confusing tone, because again, is this supposed to be a horror film? Is this supposed to be a fantasy film? I'm not bloody sure. But yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I think it's just down to ratings and whether you would force this upon friends and loved ones.
Well, I forced her upon you, so are you a friend or a loved one?
Well, not anymore, mate.
Right, no, so I'll go first on that one. If you don't mind.
Go for it.
So it's a bit of a mixed bag in regards to what I'm going to say next, and it's kind of contradictory as well, because would you recommend it to others? Aside from yourself, because we do it on the podcast, no. I wouldn't recommend this to others. I wouldn't subject this film to others. But would I rate it low? No, I wouldn't, because I like the ideas in it. I like what Clive Barker tried to do, even though he came across studio pressure and then the output of it. But I love the fact that people rallied around this, and then you get that Cabal cut, you get that theatrical cut.
Oh, it's the definition of a cult movie, isn't it?
Because people could see the ideas that Barker was trying to get, especially in his novel. And I've never read the novel, I will admit. So with everything there, it's a 3.
Yeah.
For me. But would I recommend it to others? No, because there's nobody I know, aside from yourself, that I could recommend this to. You couldn't go to any average person. Like I said, I wouldn't subject my wife to this film.
Yeah.
I'm just not.
I wouldn't have if I'd already seen it before.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
So no, I wouldn't recommend it. But for me personally, it is a 3. I still enjoy this film for what it's trying to deliver.
I mean, I agree with pretty much everything you said there, except for I don't think I can give it a 3 in its current. Based on what I saw, I think it's a 2-star film, but it's a 4-star idea. Like I said, there's a better film there. Like some films you just see, well, that's just a 2-star film. Draw a line under it. End of days. But with this, I'm like, all right, what I experienced was a 2-star film without question. I don't. There's no way I'm recommending it to anyone. By the way, just not a fucking chance. But as like, if you were like a massive movie buff and you had never seen it, kind of like, I guess like you have to me as like this kind of bizarre curio, then it makes sense. Because as I said, we almost enjoyed reading about it more than we enjoyed watching it. And as I said, retrospectively, I enjoyed the movie more after I had watched it. But most people are just going to watch it and go, this film makes no sense. It's messy. The acting's not great. The direction's insane. Like I said, 2-star film, but there's a potentially great film in there. It just never gets to the surface. But like I said, I like in terms of recommending this to just like just some of my mates who watch the occasional film. No way, not a fucking chance. They would hate this film. Most of my friends would flat out despise this film.
It's interesting though, because this is one of the very first ones that we've done, and we've done nearly 50 episodes now, where we're both reviewing 2 different films. We won't get this very often. No, you're giving yours a 2. I'm giving mine a 3. We both watched the same titled film, the same filmed film, but 2 very different releases.
Yeah, and let me make this clear. I would not be surprised at all that if I watched the director's cut or the Cabal cut or whatever, that this film could be pushed up to a 3.
Yeah.
It's because like so many of my issues with this film is that there's just, like I said, nothing makes sense. That things just keep happening and there's no motivation explained or anything like that. If the film is given a bit more time, and I have no doubt that this is still a messy film, whether it be the 2-hour cut, the 2.5-hour cut, whatever. I don't think in any world this is going to be a quote unquote great movie.
No.
But I wouldn't be surprised if I watched that and it pushed up to a 3. But if I'm reviewing exclusively the theatrical cut, which I am, it's a 2-star film.
Yeah. Totally.
And like I said, like at times it just about scrapes that. There are times I was just like, man, this is actively bad. But then those ideas, like those little glimmers, I'm like, oh no, I'm back on board kind of thing. So yeah. 2-star, but a very interesting 2-star film.
I'm wondering if this is the film of this could have been the film, or if there are films to come that nearly end our podcast partnership, where it's like, you're watching it and you're thinking, oh, man, I don't know if I could do this again.
Well, no, all it's going to do is pushing us to a safer bet. So that brings us to next week's choice. So after Transformers, which doesn't sound mental, but was, and Nightbreed, which sounded mental, and it is, we're going to go for a much safer, much more kind of, in our wheelhouse film. We're going to go for Beverly Hills Cop next week, which I'm almost amazed it's taken us until episode, 49? I think that'll be.
It'll be 49, yeah, 49.
Yeah, 49, which is crazy.
Because it's random. We've done one Eddie Murphy film, and it was 48 hours.
I know, it's crazy. Considering how much I love Eddie Murphy as well, especially 80s era Eddie Murphy. And the fact that, when you think of the 80s, I think most people are like one of the top films that would be on most people's list would be Beverly Hills Cop. And I think that's true of both of us. Yeah. It's just bizarrely, for one reason or another, we've just not got around to it. So yeah, episode 49, I think this is what brought us to it. It's like, we need a safe bet. After 2 absolutely bonkers films where, you're still not sure if you'd even seen Transformers before. I'd never seen Nightbreed before. We've definitely 100% both seen Beverly Hills Cop. Take that to the bank.
It's a good 15 years, mine, since I've watched it, I will admit.
Oh, it'll be interesting to see how it holds up, because it was one of my favorite films growing up. So and again, I haven't seen Beverly Hills Cop in probably the best part of a decade, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. But yeah, Jesus Christ, if you've joined us for Nightbreeds, I assume you're going to join us for Beverly Hills Cop. So God bless you for listening to this if you've made it all the way through. But if you have, like I said, thanks for listening as always, and please join us next week for Beverly Hills Cop.
I still stand by last week as well. So if anyone out there is listening and can help me design my 4 Pillars T-shirt, it wasn't 4 Pillars, was it? It was Mount Rushmore T-shirt.
Oh, your Mount Rushmore T-shirt.
I'm still trying to get my Mount Rushmore T-shirt going.
The only thing strange in this film is your Mount Rushmore T-shirt. So yeah, maybe one day we'll see that. Jesus Christ.
But thanks for listening. As always, mate, it's been a pleasure, and I'm looking forward to Beverly Hills Cop next week.
Cool. Cheers, guys. Catch you. Bye-bye. Oh, yeah, and before I forget, because I always forget, here's Rob telling you where you can actually find us.
Yeah, so we're currently on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter under Hey You Guys 80s or at Hey You Guys 80s. And we're also on email at heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Please feel free to drop us any emails, any recommendations, or any reviews you have. But whilst we're on about that, wherever you get your podcasts, please also smash the subscribe button. Yes, I said smash.
It's fine. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Leave us a review and leave us some 5-star ratings as well. But make sure they're 5-star ratings.
Yeah. We're not interested in 1 star. 5-star. If it's not going to be 5-star, don't go smashing anything. Just leave your opinion to yourself. 5-star ratings only. But yeah, if you could do that, we'd really appreciate it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you next week.